It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends.
So, being completely honest, I didn't want to write this video. I didn't want to shoot it or even talk about the possibility that J.K. Rowling may be transphobic because, honestly, it's really difficult for me to discuss. And there's really a whole way one could look at this whole controversy and argue that it's a complete non-issue and it's a non-story. And that's what I truly wanted this to be. I wanted to just ignore it. But as much as I wanted to skip making this video, I can't. Because, as the clip that I showed at the beginning of this video says, one of the hardest things for any of us to do is to stand up to those we hold dear. Now, I'm going to come back to that later on, but I want to make clear that this video, while being extremely critical of J.K. Rowling, comes from a really complicated mixture of my own pain, love, and hope. So before I dive into what's actually going on, I want to make clear that this discussion about J.K. Rowling possibly being transphobic is a completely separate issue from the criticism surrounding her inclusion, or lack thereof, of gay characters, and specifically the accusations of queerbaiting that she's faced around the character of Dumbledore and Grindelwald. Now, while I think those are entirely justified opinions, they are criticisms of Rowling's attempts to be an ally to only the gay community. Being an ally is not something you can place upon yourself, but is shown by your actions, and is something that the LGBTQ community judges you to be based on said actions. Nor does being supportive of the LGB part of the queer community make you instantly supportive of the transgender community, or above reproach in criticisms of that. And we'll see that very clearly with even some within the gay and lesbian community who have actively worked against the transgender community. And regardless, I've done a video where I dive into the issue surrounding Rowling's gay representation in the Wizarding World, and I'll link that up here and below, along with an article I wrote about it as well. So if you want my in-depth thoughts on that, check those out. No, the issues surrounding Rowling now are not that she has failed in some aspects of her allyship, but that she is actively against the transgender community. So, for a while now, J.K. Rowling has been under fire for multiple instances where she has liked several transphobic comments on Twitter. In my research, all of these like comments are based around TERF, or trans-exclusionary radical feminist ideology. For those of you who may not know, TERFs, or radfems, or gender-critical feminists as they call themselves, are mostly female and predominantly, but not exclusively, lesbians who reject the idea of trans women as women. They assert that real women are only those born with a vagina and XX chromosomes, and that trans women are just men who have fetishized womanhood and mutilated themselves if they've gotten gender confirmation surgery. And they also say if a trans woman has had sex with a woman, the trans woman is a rapist because they have tricked said women. They also typically only frame womanhood in terms of women's oppression by men. You have a penis at any point in your life, you're a man, and therefore an oppressor. TERFs believe that transgender people remove necessary conversations about real women in discussions of abortion or sexism, which completely ignores the facts that trans men are also directly impacted by abortion rights. Trans women are also extremely vocal in working with cis women to fight for said abortion rights, and that trans women and men often deal with similar sexism, discrimination, and misogyny, and drastically more so in some situations, and not even counting transphobia, which is what we're discussing right now. TERFs also typically align themselves with the far right, or at least conservative parties, in order to specifically attack the transgender community. And many have resorted to doxing, trolling, picketing, or generally abusive behavior towards trans people. The TERF community is also very strong within the United Kingdom, where J.K. Rowling calls home, and have been known to actively protest and stop pride parades, and have generally just been very dangerous to the British transgender community. I myself have also been the target of several TERFs, getting really horrific messages both on Twitter and to my personal inbox from these people. I won't repeat stuff, but some of the things that I've gotten have been truly awful. And I'll just leave it there. There's honestly a lot to break down when it comes to TERFs, and I can't do it all in this video. So if you're curious as to why TERF ideology is so harmful to trans women and women in general, I would recommend Riley J. Dennis's fantastic video that I'll link above here. I think she gives a great summary of TERFs in greater detail. Back to J.K. Rowling, fans have found that Rowling had liked many tweets from TERFs, including several that specifically expressed the harmful and disgusting argument that trans women are rapists, just by virtue of us being transgender. Now, when this was discovered, Rowling's representatives explained, quote, "I'm afraid J.K. Rowling has a clumsy and middle-aged moment, and this is not the first time she is favorited by holding her phone incorrectly." So, yeah, that argument is obviously incredibly weak for numerous reasons. First, you're telling me that Rowling keeps hitting the like button accidentally on the same types of tweets? A bit hard to buy. And on top of that, if you notice, this response doesn't actually address the issue at hand, refusing to state if Rowling does or does not support these views, just saying she accidentally liked them. Even further, and this is what brought about this video and the whole controversy and conversation in general, just this week it was discovered that Rowling has followed, on Twitter, several notable transphobic and TERF Twitter accounts, including following Magdalene Burns, a, quote, self-professed transphobe, who is a YouTuber who has numerous transphobic videos and tweets, including one video where she calls transgender people blackface actors. I hope I don't need to explain why that is particularly offensive to both trans people and people of color. When reporters reached out to Rowling to comment on all of this, her representative stated, quote, "J.K. Rowling won't be commenting. However, we know she follows on Twitter a wide range of people she finds interesting or thought-provoking." Setting aside the fact that we would call TERFs thought-provoking or interesting, this is where the whole controversy gets difficult to talk about. Because it's very easy to say, hey, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's only a few like tweets and followings, and it doesn't mean she gives her tacit endorsement to everything that person says. And that's completely and totally fair to say. I myself have followed right-wing creators and groups in order to get a feel for the conversations they are having, in order to better refute them or to better address them when they come up in my own work. But what I think is the most telling and damning thing is Rowling's complete lack of a response. It takes so little just to make your point of view clear on a matter. Hell, even a simple tweet saying something like, "I support trans people," would honestly at least put this whole issue in a new context and light. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would at least be a start. But Rowling has consistently said nothing, instead having third parties give really half-hearted explanations that say absolutely nothing about her viewpoint. And by saying nothing, and then mixing that with her liking and following of transphobic Twitter content, it feels like she's saying everything she needs to say right there. It feels like she's saying nothing to avoid the active mainstream controversy that would definitely come from her saying something as definitive as, "I don't think trans women are women." Yet she's signaled her support through implication, which is a tactic often used by groups who actively work against the rights of other groups. To use an extreme example, we see it in how Donald Trump signals his support, or at least tacit endorsement, of far-right groups through coded language and false equivalencies.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
Now, I'm not saying that J.K. Rowling is part of the far right. Clearly, her work, both in fiction and real life, makes that abundantly clear. I mean, hell, Harry Potter is probably one of the least subtle, yet still deeply nuanced discussions and refutations of fascist ideologies in popular fiction. You cannot look at characters like Voldemort or Grindelwald and see their ideology of purebloods over mudbloods and not see the parallels to our real world. That's the intention of the series. But that exact fact is exactly why this whole issue is so painful to me. She so clearly understands the common tactics and ideologies used to dehumanize and demonize groups of people. Exactly like TERFs do. How can you not see a common thread between all Muggle-born witches are filth to something like all trans women are rapists? And I'm not saying that Rowling has to be the perfect ideal ally. To do that takes time, conversations, and learning, as is clear with her work with gay representation in Harry Potter. Yet when it comes to trans people, she has shown no outward signs of support or even a desire to learn more. Which is such a disappointment coming from a woman who is seen by the world as a leader in charity and caring. When you are someone with the visibility and platform of Rowling, saying nothing while subtly supporting a certain group sadly says everything for you. I hope I'm wrong. I really, really do. Because J.K. Rowling has perhaps been one of the biggest inspirations and influences on me since I was a kid. Harry Potter has gotten me through a lot of tough times of depression. I would listen to the Harry Potter audiobooks and watch the movies just to find solace in a world that spoke to me during these times where I needed an escape from the pain that I was feeling. And in all honesty, right now even, I'm currently going through some really hard stuff in my life. I won't get into the specifics of it, but I'm honestly going through some really hard stuff. And one of the things I've been doing over the past few weeks has been to listen to Harry Potter audiobooks as I go to sleep. It helps me cope during the darkest hours of the night where my brain feels like it's most critical. And I'm able to shut it off and dive into these worlds and these adventures of Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And feel comfortable and safe and get out of my head for a little while. Harry Potter means so much to me. I mean, on a slightly more comical note, my cat's name is even Newt, named after Newt Scamander from the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movies. Not the best movies in the world, to be clear, but I do love that character. I love seeing a clearly neurodivergent Hufflepuff, which is what I am, played by Eddie Redmayne, who was a actor who played a trans woman in a very prominent movie, The Danish Girl. So I can kind of make that headcanon work. So I just have a very big love for the character of Newt. Even in some of her worst work in the wizarding world, I still find things that I really connect to and speak to me. And so I desperately hope that J.K. Rowling is still a friend to me as a trans person. Like I said at the top, I say all of this with hope and love. J.K. Rowling, I'm telling you right here and right now, the transgender community needs you to stand with us. And more than that, I need you. I truly do. You have no idea what it would mean to me, even at 27 years old, to see you stand up for my right to exist as I am. My right to live as a person that makes me happy. To live a life that feels worth living. You have been, and I hope you still are, my friend. Yet in your own words, it takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. So here I am, telling you that right now, you aren't being a good friend. But that doesn't mean that you can't be. Anyways, that's it for this video. I know that was a bit of a heavier one. I will have a more fun video coming out tomorrow. But if you like this content, please give my channel a subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Or consider giving to my Patreon page. Like I said, I'm going through a lot of stuff right now, and some of that comes down to financial situation. So any way and anything that you can give would honestly mean the world to me, especially right now. But regardless of whether you subscribe or you give to my Patreon page, I wish you all the best, and until next time, live long and prosper.